I'm sure that is going to be like a total shock to everyone listening. It's still a
It's a
shock to
total shock.
me.
It's a
Like,
shock to me. Yeah, it's a total shock to me.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. And today we're going to kind of veer from our norm, and Stephanie and I are just going to have a conversation because there's some changes that have occurred with my life. So if anyone watches our podcast instead of just listening to it, you may have noticed that I don't have my usual unapologetically outspoken banner in the background, and I'm in hotel rooms. So I am not on vacation. And what has actually happened is I don't talk much about my personal life, but I am married, and my husband recently had the opportunity for a job transfer. And as of a few days ago, I am now living in the Czech Republic.
I'm sure that is going to be like a total shock to everyone listening. It's still a
It's a
shock to
total shock.
me.
It's a
Like,
shock to me. Yeah, it's a total shock to me. And I still feel like I feel like I'm on vacation because it hasn't really hit me yet that I'm living here for the next 2 years. And then there's the very bizarre and surreal aspect of being a highly outspoken, patriotic American, and I am now living in Europe.
yeah.
That's it feels really, really strange. And I've had several people that knew I was making this jump ask if I was going to continue the podcast. And I'm like, why wouldn't I continue the podcast? Like, this doesn't change the fact that I am a proud, outspoken American and that I am a patriot. And for the next couple of years, I'm just going to be seeing things from a different perspective. And it might be a little shocking, but I have to say that especially with all the shit that's going on in the world, even like right now I'm still in a hotel. We don't have permanent housing yet. Like, this whole thing happened so quickly, and it wasn't anything that we planned. It was an opportunity that came up. And, frankly, ever since leaving law enforcement, like I I've been working a job that was just a job. And my passion is speaking out, and my passion is this podcast. And so it really wasn't a big deal for me to leave my job. And it was a really great opportunity for my husband. So instead of being selfish, I put the needs of the family against, ahead of my own whatever. So I don't know how to say that correctly without sounding like a dick, but
No, you
I
didn't sound like a dick. I don't think at
like
all.
basically I love living in Texas. Like, that is my home, but this opportunity came up, and I'm going to make the best of it. And I really think it's going to bring kind of an interesting twist to the podcast, because being here, I have access to like news networks that are not commonly broadcast in the United States. And even with this whole like Israel-Palestine conflict that, is going on right now and that we talked about on Monday, like in this hotel, it's Al Jazeera TV, it's France 24, it's like this, broadcast networks that focus on Europe and the Middle East. And I'm seeing things that I don't think are being widely broadcast in the United States. So I think it is going to bring an interesting perspective in terms of everything that's happening in our world right now, and listening to how others view America and view the United States.
How
And
do they
so,
view us in the Czech Republic?
I haven't been here long enough to know, but I will say this. So I we brought one of our dogs along on this trip, and I was walking the dog the other day, and we're not in Prague, we're in a smaller city, but it's like the second largest city in the Czech Republic. And while I was walking, I saw not one but three "fuck Biden" written on traffic signs. And so there was one that just said, fuck Biden. There was one that said the UN equals the Nazi symbol. And then underneath that, it said, fuck Biden. And then there was another sign where it had just like the UN equals Nazi symbol. So who's right, who's defacing the signs? I don't know, but it's giving me the impression that, not everyone here is in support of the Biden administration either, which I found rather comforting.
Yeah, that's actually really surprising to me
Yeah.
because I would just assume that all of Europe is more liberal and more like against Trump and like pro Biden. So that's really surprising. Is the Czech Republic part of the UN? I
I
don't even know. I
I
thought they were.
honestly, I think they are. I'm supposed to go through like 7 weeks of Czech cultural training, and
Oh, wow, you can fill us in.
I've only gone through like the first initial, it was like an hour and a half little thing.
Mhm.
And from what I have been learning, um, it's its own, like even currency wise, like the Czech is on its own currency. They use the Czech crown. They don't use the euro like pretty much the rest of Europe. They're kind of like
Almost
I
like
don't
Sweden or like
know.
Denmark or something.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know yet.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm very interested to learn. Obviously, I want to learn how to speak Czech, and it's going to take some time, I'm sure. But again, this is all still very new to me, and I'm just trying to figure out what the hell I'm even doing. And, we're just gonna kind of take it day by day. But like I said, seeing those signs was comforting for me that people, at least
Yeah.
some people here are like, fuck Biden, because I'm maintaining that stance regardless. And I am going to continue, like, this isn't going to change how I feel about anything.
Yeah.
So I just think it'll be a very interesting perspective to
It
bring to
will
the.
be. Are you like nervous being over there talking about the stuff we talk about on the podcast?
No, no, I feel like I was more nervous living in America waiting for the FBI to knock on my door, you
Yeah,
know?
that's a good point. That's a really good
Yeah.
point.
So honestly, like I'm really not concerned about it. I mean, I guess we'll see what unfolds. I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is like what's going to happen with the 2024 election that I think isn't going to be. And being an American who's not in America defending my country. Like I
Hmm.
think that to me is going to be the most difficult because like I have this mentality that I will not go down without a fight. Nobody's taking my guns. Like
Yeah.
whatever shows up at my door, game on. And now I'm not even there, So
Right.
I'm very concerned about the downfall of the United States and just being in a position where I'm overseas in another country. Like that to me is probably my biggest concern.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. That's got to be a little unnerving, especially when you still have family here and things like
Mhm.
that. I have so many like things that I'm curious about that I feel like we could do podcast episodes about. Like the news channels that you were talking about. Like, wouldn't it be amazing to hear clips from those versus what we have? Because there's, all kinds of theories that we're being fed propaganda. Um, I know when Obama was in office, he actually, I think he got rid of that Smith-Mundt Act, which pretty much said like there cannot be propaganda in America. And
Mhm.
so with that gone, like I think there is, and it'll just be really interesting to hear like what we're hearing versus what you're getting. And I'm sure you're going to get a lot more of a, like the inside scoop of what's happening.
Well, I will say that like when we were talking about Israel and Palestine on Monday, most of what I was watching on Al Jazeera, like a lot of the reporters were questioning how the US is going to respond.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I'm when I'm looking up, articles coming out in the United States, they're not discussing that, at least at the time, as much as the news here was discussing that and constantly talking about, Biden has, vowed to support Israel. And it was just like this very specific focus on how the US is going to respond, because I think everyone looks to the United States when
Mm-hmm.
there's any kind of conflict. And so I think seeing that perspective, especially when it comes to, the ongoing issues that we have with China and Russia and Ukraine and now this whole thing, like
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I'm going to have access to like general media access to stuff that you would have to search really hard for to
Mm-hmm.
find.
Yeah, you probably will. The other thing that I want to know, and you probably don't know this yet, so we'll have to do another episode, is like the food there compared to the food here, like the labels, because I think that the Czech Republic is probably included in all the European countries that have things banned, like all those dyes that are banned there, but that are in like everything here. I want to do a comparison because I bet you're going to be getting like much higher quality food, less crap that's put in there to basically kill you. So that'll be interesting to kind of like compare it.
Well, right now I can't read any of the food labels.
Oh,
But
true. Yeah, I didn't think about that part.
but I will say, like, Google Translate is pretty incredible. I didn't even
Yeah.
realize that they had this whole video thing where you could just camera whatever's written in another language and it'll translate it into English.
Well,
So
that's
that's,
convenient.
yeah, that's what I've been trying using to kind of figure my way around. And again, I've only been here for what, 3 days as of the recording of this
Yeah.
podcast. So, I have a lot to learn and I'm interested in that too. And it's just, I've gone from this, 2-acre property in Texas with nobody around, surrounded by, cows and goats and not very many neighbors. And, I have to take a drive into town if I want to be around people. And now I'm in this, like, literally, I'm surrounded by like the communist apartment buildings and just crowds and buses and people. And so it's just going to be very different way of living for the next 2 years.
Well, I think everything happens for a reason, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that it's going to put such unique perspective. And it's like, you're there on the ground in Europe. Like it's pretty cool because you're gonna, I'm sure, uncover a lot of things and have a totally different perspective. So I think it'll be a good thing. Tell everyone real quick about the experience of traveling with a pet to Europe, because I think people should kind of have a heads up on that in case they ever need to do that.
Well, I'll say this. If you have a large pet like mine, I have a Newfoundland, which is what I brought along on this trip. And you can't just throw a Newfoundland on a plane. And there are a shit ton of travel restrictions. And we opted to use a pet transportation company. And thank God we did, because I don't think if I had tried to do this on my own, if we would have gotten her here. There's apparently only 2 airlines right now that will fly large dogs overseas, to where we are anyway. Had to have a custom gigantic crate built, paid an exorbitant amount of money to have this company transport the dog. There's USDA paperwork, there's European Union paperwork, there's all this stuff that your vet has to fill out. Everything has to be done like a minimum of 30 days in advance. And we were right on the cusp of that because we found out about this job opportunity and moved within a month. And it was just like absolutely crazy. My dog was on a different flight than I was. Like we flew from Dallas, Fort Worth to London, and then from London to Prague. And my dog flew from Dallas to Frankfurt, Germany, and then had like a 10-hour drive from Frankfurt to Prague. And like she got dropped off at our hotel at midnight 2 days later. And like, I'm so proud of her because she's way more resilient than I thought she was going to be. And I was really worried about it because we stayed in a hotel in Dallas for 2 days beforehand and like she was a shit show. But she's doing really well now. Like if you have a small dog, I guess it's not that big of a deal. But if you have a large dog and you are taking your dog to Europe, like plan well in advance and save your money because she's lucky I love her so much. And I guess I'm lucky that my husband loves me so much that he was willing to spend the amount of money that we did to bring our dog.
Oh, it's just crazy. It seems like they're more strict on allowing a dog on the airline instead of like
Yeah.
human beings that could
Yeah.
actually like pose a real serious threat. So I just thought that was so weird.
I was way more stressed on her traveling than our own traveling. And
Yeah.
the thing that I am so grateful for is the Czech Republic is super dog friendly, and they didn't have a quarantine process where I know some countries, when you bring your dog, you have to quarantine them for anywhere from like a week to a month or more. And so I'm just so grateful that like being here, she was brought to me right away and didn't have to be quarantined. But I think a lot of that has to do with the excessive paperwork that had to be done beforehand.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. I'm glad they're dog friendly. When I went to Germany, they were dog friendly and people like brought their pets like into restaurants and bars
Yeah.
and stuff. And it was really cool. So hopefully it'll be like that for you too.
The one thing I guess is like on public transportation, they require your dog to be in a muzzle. And so
Oh,
that'll be something different. But so far, the one thing that I have noticed is, coming from especially Texas, people are so friendly and outgoing and everyone smiles at you. And it's so easy to strike up conversation. And people here are very reserved and they don't smile. And so, first of all, there's a language barrier. And I don't want to be seen as that, oh, the obnoxious American, or the
right.
American that couldn't be bothered to learn the language. And the only thing I can say about that is, again, this happened so fast that I didn't have time to learn the language beforehand because I was packing up my house, which in itself was a shit show because I had things going to 4 different places. Some stuff was going into local storage. Some stuff was being stored by the company that my husband works for. Some stuff is being shipped to the Czech Republic. But we're not going to get any of our stuff until 4 to 6 weeks after we have permanent housing, which we probably won't have for a month. So then I had to bring like 4 suitcases worth of shit with me. And I guess I'm also learning how to live with less.
Yeah. That's
You
got to
know,
be hard. A whole month.
yeah. And it's going to be more than that, though, because by the time we actually get permanent housing, our stuff has to be shipped. And so that's going to be, at least a month before we even get any of the stuff. And then we won't be in a hotel with accommodations. We're just going to be somewhere and I don't know what we're going to have. So a lot of shit is up in the air and that stresses me out, but I'll adapt and deal. But learning to be in a situation where it's just number one, completely out of my hands, and number two, not being able to communicate the way I want to. And I am furiously trying to learn some basic Czech, and my goal again is to speak the language. I want to be respectful, obviously, to the people here. So that'll be interesting too. But I do miss, even though it's only been a few days, I do miss the friendliness of Americans.
Yeah. Well, not all Americans though. I
Not
mean, you
all
go to big
Americans.
cities
No.
and
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
very nice and friendly either.
Yes, I will
Yeah.
rephrase that and say I miss the friendliness of small town America.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they say the best way to learn a language is just to move there and immerse yourself in it. So I'm sure you will be speaking it by the time you come back.
Yeah.
Because it is temporary, right? You're only going to be there for a few years
Yep.
and I'm sure it'll go by quick. I feel like time always flies. Now, are you going to have a car there or are you going to be walking? I feel like in Europe, people walk everywhere.
Everything here, yeah. Pedestrians here, it's a lot of public transportation too. You have the buses and then you have like the trams or trains or whatever they are. And honestly, it's overwhelming for me because the hotel we're staying at right now is not in the center of town. It's kind of on the outskirts, but to get into the center of town, like there's no traffic rules, or there are, but
Mhm.
nobody follows them. So you have cars and bicycles and pedestrians and the trains and everyone is, and nobody's getting in accidents. Like they're all just like, I'm like near misses. I'm gasping, because I'm used to that, like farm roads with like, you see one other car every 5 minutes. And now
Right.
I'm
And
like,
pedestrians always get
yeah,
the right of way.
yes. Well, here just everyone does whatever they want. And that like is totally different for me as well.
Yeah. Oh man, huge culture shock,
Yeah,
but
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
And I've been to Europe several times, but
Mhm.
there's a big difference between visiting somewhere and living somewhere. So I
Yeah.
am very excited for what I'm going to learn here, and I'm very excited for what this opportunity to do something different. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm going to make the most of it. But I just want to assure our listeners that, you know, I am still 100% a patriotic American, and I will continue to be so throughout this 2 years.
Well, I'm relieved that we're still doing the podcast because
Yeah.
selfishly, that was the first thing I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about the podcast? But I love that you're
Well,
like all for it still.
well, what's funny is that was one of the ways my husband sold it to me. He's like, you won't have to work and you can just focus on your podcast. I
Yeah.
was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be nice. It'll be nice that you have like that freedom to kind of pursue the things that you want to pursue. And,
Yeah.
I think again, like everything happens for a reason. And I think that there's going to be like a lot of good that comes out of this experience for you. So I'm excited for you and also nervous because I know how that is just like having, your whole life kind of changed up, but it'll be
Yeah,
fun.
I have honestly never, since I was 13, I've always worked. And ever since I graduated college, I've had a full-time job. And this is the first time in my life where I don't. And that is fucking scary in and of itself. So it's just a whole bunch of change thrust at me at one time. And like I said, I'm going to make the best of it and turn it into something amazing. So
Yeah. All right. Well, now everyone's like up to speed on what's going on. And yeah, I think we'll have a lot of really good episodes with these different perspectives now. So I'm just
yeah,
looking forward to that. I think it'll be really cool. And yeah, so that's what's been going on in Tara's life. A lot of busy, crazy stuff all happening at once, but all good, right?
yeah, all good.
All right. Well, we'll keep everyone posted on that as well. And thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you guys back here on Friday. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.